Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler. This time, we move into slightly new territory. We've looked at things like the films, the Clone Wars and whatnot, Star Wars Rebels, and we've delved a little into the comedic parody territory with stuff like Lego Star Wars. That's all stuff that is essentially being produced through either Cartoon Network, Lucasfilm, whatever. And I've tried to stay away from parodies a little bit because there's a question of where do you draw the line, right? There's plenty of parodies out there like Spaceballs, but it's not being produced by Lucasfilm. It's not a Star Wars production. It just uses Star Wars as the basis for a lot of its parody material for Mel Brooks. At what point is a parody something that should be covered on this show? For now, I've decided that a line should be drawn, but one that does at least allow some of these home video releases to be looked at, though they're not something I necessarily collect to a large degree. So, what we're going to say is, if it is something that is actually in my collection, or that's going to be in my collection, we'll take a look at it. I don't tend to collect this very much, so don't expect this to be comprehensive when it comes to Star Wars parody materials. But I'll try to focus in on the stuff that was produced with Lucasfilm cooperation. That means, yes, eventually we'll look at the Robot Chicken releases, the Family Guy releases. Yeah, a very strong opinion on the Family Guy stuff, and not very positive about it, though the regular show's fine. The Star Wars parodies are freaking awful. But we want to start out looking at these with a fairly recent one that is also a fairly recent home video release, and that is Disney's Phineas and Ferb Star Wars. This is one that's a recent release. It was released near the end of 2014. It was originally, I believe it was a Target exclusive very, very briefly, and then released through other outlets plenty of places after, I think it was like a month. It was very short exclusive there. In this case, only released on DVD, despite it being a recent release. Okay. Here you've got your cover there. Information on both sides. Edges. Right, Disney all over it. I like the way it says it down there. Star Wars Episode 4, or just Star Wars 4, A New Hope, retold and refurb-ished. Ferb being like Phineas and Ferb, of course. This is a slipcase. Just slip it off. Underneath. Right, similar packaging here. Nothing unusual with it. When you actually see this in a store, most of the time these days, unless it's like a later pressing of it or something, you will see this little sticker on it that says, new on DVD, and free Perry in Carbonite keychain inside. Perry the platypus, that is. When you open it up, it just kind of falls out. It's this thing. Perry in Carbonite. It's just a little keychain here. I've kept mine inside here because I don't plan to actually use the thing. But that's that little bonus thing that comes in there. It's just a little tiny keychain. It's a nice, hefty keychain. I mean, it's heavy. But, yeah, that's all that it is. That's all that little freebie thing is on the inside of it. Of course, the good stuff is the stuff that's actually on the disc. You pop it open, and aside from your Disney Magic Rewards code number and stuff like that, no other kind of little leaflet or anything like that in here. They're just sort of standard Disney-looking DVD there. They're in gray. You pop this in your player, and you're going to wind up seeing some previews. And preview-wise, this thing has a preview for Clone Wars: The Lost Missions, as you would expect given the time this was released in. It's got a preview for Star Wars Rebels, coming up on Disney XD, which at the time was being released. And it also includes some Disney trailers. Big Hero 6, which we saw back on the Clone Wars and Spark of Rebellion materials, but also a trailer for 101 Dalmatians being re-released. Now, if you go into the sneak peeks section, the little preview section actually from the menu system, it does also include a preview that's just a quick look at just the concept of Disney DVDs and Blu-rays. More or less the Blu-rays. As far as bonus material beyond previews, if you're thinking of bonus material like little documentaries and stuff like that, nothing to be found. Commentaries, nothing to be found. What you got here is the Phineas and Ferb Star Wars special. It's sort of a parody of A New Hope. Think of this in the same vein as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern with Hamlet. And for some people, that's like, oh, of course. For others, it's like, the hell is he talking about? Okay. Hamlet, the play, has its own storyline. Then the play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is another tale focusing on the two characters of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern from Hamlet, telling their story with odd aside things that's sort of like, what are they doing throughout the rest of the story that's a little more comedic. Another way to look at it is to think of this kind of like Kevin Rubio's Star Wars comics, Tag and Bink Are Dead, which was a play on Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which takes Star Wars A New Hope and shows us the adventures of Tag and Bink, these two rebels, sort of crisscrossing with what we've got in A New Hope. Parody, but a lot of times staying close to what the film actually does. In this case, basically A New Hope remains pretty much unchanged. What it does, though, is it adds this adventure of Phineas and Ferb and these other characters from the show, like their sister, who in this case is a stormtrooper, a couple of their friends who are also stormtroopers, their buddy, the platypus, who's always like the little secret agent, is now a rebel spy in this case. The guy he's always going up against, the mad scientist type dude, is Darthen Schmertz in this case. Okay, but just takes those characters, uses them in an in-universe type of setting, type of characterization, and then just runs A New Hope. And their adventures keep crisscrossing with A New Hope. For instance, they run into R2-D2 before he gets picked up by the Jawas. The result of that is that the disc, little DVD-looking disc, with the Death Star plans accidentally gets left in Phineas and Ferb's vehicle, their land speeder, and they have to get it back to the rebels. So as the rebels are getting R2, who they think has the information, they actually have to get the information there so that when they look it up on R2, it's back within R2-D2. It goes into scenes that we see in other media, like Luke Skywalker from the deleted scene looking up, right, with his macro binoculars and seeing the Tantive 4 versus the Devastator up in space. It has a scene taking place right around that same time where Luke says, you know, hey, Phineas and Ferb, how you doing? And Phineas and Ferb have their land speeder decked out with these giant pod racer engines, and it turns out that that's what power converters are for. Right, so when Luke says he wants to go to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters, we always used to think, oh, it's just some, you know, utility type things. No, he wants to get some big old, like, things to turn little pod racer engines to transform out of his vehicle and such, because he saw Phineas and Ferb do it. When the Dianoga grabs Luke, pulls him down, and then lets go of him for no apparent reason, other than the fact that, hey, I guess the trash compactor's about to start closing. Well, that's explained here as, you know, here's why the Dianoga grabbed him, and here's why he threw him back, and here's why the compactor starts closing in the first place. When Han miraculously decides, after saying, you know, I know what I'm doing, and he's going to walk away from the Battle of Yavin, then shows up with his Yahoo! Coming in to save Luke and everything from Vader, you know, we never see the moment, at least within the film, where Han changes his mind and says, you know what? The Wookiee's right. I'm going to help these new friends of mine. In this, we get a scene in which one of the characters that we meet here, a Phineas and Ferb character, talks to Han, and it gets him to say, you know what, maybe I should, and he goes out and helps them. So it is a parody, it's comedy, but it's exceptionally well done. It keeps the continuity of A New Hope essentially intact, but tells its story in a way that interweaves in a very amusing fashion. This is Disney using two of its properties, Star Wars and Phineas and Ferb, and merging them in a way that is very amusing, very fun, and respectful to the source material of both. Now, one thing that is different is it's a cartoon, and it's Disney. And you might sit back and say, uh-oh, cartoon Disney. I'm thinking, you got to kiss the girl, or let it go, or one jump ahead of the whatever, with, you know, the dude from Spark of Rebellion, dude from Rebels. Oh, wait, no, sorry, that's not Ezra, that's actually Aladdin. You would think Disney, you think cartoon, you think musical. Yes, this is a musical, to an extent. It's basically got 5 main songs in it. You got Darthen Schmertz singing about the Force and his Sithinator, which is his new weapon that he's devising there. You got a story about how great it is to be on Tatooine. You got a song that's like a Rebel celebration song. Solo, it's basically like a little sort of a blues type song to it. You got a great song about the Empire and, you know, yay for conformity and so forth. There's not a lot of songs in it. The songs there are funny. The songs there are kind of amusing, and they are interesting enough that a lot of fans out there have done like I have and actually picked up the soundtrack to this, which is just those 5 songs, so it's very cheap on iTunes. It does have its own soundtrack, but it is not included here. Personally, I find it fun. And I did have some concern as to whether or not this was normally a Phineas and Ferb thing or something where they did musical stuff just because it's a Star Wars special. It is something that is a big Phineas and Ferb thing. They do musical numbers on that all the time. Okay, so it's not something that they just shoehorned into this. And you can see that because of the bonus features here, you don't have documentary stuff, you don't have commentaries, but it does include additional adventures. It includes multiple adventures of Phineas and Ferb just from the regular TV show. You have For Your Ice Only / Happy New Year, Steampunks / It's No Picnic, Terrifying Tri-State Trilogy of Terror Parts 1 and 2, Doof 101 / Father's Day, and Tales from the Resistance Parts 1 and 2. So you have some pretty nice substantial material here. So for someone who's trying to collect episodes of Phineas and Ferb, this is a way to get quite a few of them in one place, even though it is, focusing in on the Star Wars special. It's nice to see that substantial amount of extra material here, but of course it's obviously Disney trying to get people who like this to pick up more Phineas and Ferb stuff, to get their kids, if they're hooked on the Star Wars version, to get hooked on the rest of Phineas and Ferb. But it's a decent amount of material, bringing the full runtime to approximately 164 minutes instead of about 45 or so for the Star Wars special. So personally, I find this one of the more amusing parodies for Star Wars that we've seen in a very long time. Good for the source material. I like the music of it, and I'm not always necessarily someone who loves the Disney music. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's horrible. In this case, it's pretty good. I would definitely pick this one up. Don't expect it to take the film seriously per se, but it respects it, and it is a funny parody. And there's enough little side jokes and such that show that they really love the source material. This is not something where you would say, I love you, F you kind of thing that we got out of, the second Family Guy special, for instance. This is something where the jokes are clean. It is a family-oriented show, but at the same time, plenty of little side nods that those who have really been Star Wars geeks for a long time, like me and many others, are going to get a kick out of the little notifications. And make sure you watch it as if you could tear yourself away from the song. Watch it all the way through to the end of the credits, because we have a cool entrance by a character we know from the Battle of Yavin that wraps things up as the credits are ending. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.